All right, being biracial in a racial America, part three. Now, have you ever been by yourself, alone, with nobody watching your six, in an uncomfortable situation, maybe even a dangerous situation? If you have, you know what it's like to be black and brown in America, and you know a little bit of what it's like to be biracial in America. The Reverend Dr. Joseph Lowery, when he was doing the benediction at the inauguration of Barack Obama, had a few great statements. He said, I'd like to see the time when black doesn't have to get back, when the brown can stick around, when the yellow can be mellow, when the red man can get ahead, man, and when the white man can do what's right, man. And even back then, when the black population had gone from slavery to the pinnacle office in the world, the most powerful office in the world, still races were segmented. Black, white, Asian, Native American, everything was segmented. And you see that today in the current political environment. Former President Trump addressed Vice President Harris as someone who became black. She started out as Indian, and then she just one day decided to be black. Very interesting. Even he could not make the connection that she's of two races. She is both Indian and black because her parents were Indian and black. And the whole purpose of this podcast was to say there is a segment of the population, and a segment of the population that's growing and growing in approval, that is not being addressed, not politically, not socially, and guess what? They don't have a spokesman. I'm not signing up for that job. I'm just pointing out the fact that I've spent 63 years as someone who's biracial, and I've been invisible. No one has done political campaigns with me in mind, or someone like me in mind. And the only group I'm ever included in is the black and brown swath. And they only made that swath so they can include more people when they're being racist. And they being, let's face it, the powers that be, right? So when someone's running for president and they talk about Mexicans coming in and they're bringing rapists and they're not talking about people from Norway or Sweden, right? Nobody's building a wall for those guys. Not figuratively and definitely not physically. But folks, the statistics and receipts are there. You can see as little as 5% back in the 50s approval of interracial. And not to mention the social dangers of interracial couples at the time. I mean, this is a time when lynchings were common, when even black leadership, Medgar Evers shot in his driveway just for organizing, just for being politically active. And now the approval rate is above 90%, close to 94%, a 90% increase in the approval. And that's without any advocacy. No one's out there going, hey, I always thought the gay and lesbian community was so great. You see them in the pride parades. Hey, we're queer, we're here. They always had great slogans, not to mention great colors on the flag. I just always thought biracial people go, hey, we're biracial, we're in your facial. Yeah, it's a work in progress, okay? I got to come up with a better slogan. But my point is, there's no advocacy for that group. And yet I see more and more. When my wife and I first got married, the only biracial couple we knew were Anna and Nicole Brown Simpson. That did not end out very well. So I love the fact that now you see biracial couples on commercials. They're very commonplace. Now when we go out, we're not the odd couple going out. And hopefully my kids, being even more biracial, being multiracial, okay, are going to have even a less hard time in society. So the reason for this podcast was to go, hey, there's a population of people out there not being addressed. There's a population of people that are being included in the black and brown swath. That no one's going, hey, politically, how do we reach biracial people? Well, which biracial people are you talking about? Asian and white? Korean and white? Black and white? Okay? So you have to define exactly which biracial you're talking about, because black and white's not the only biracial on the scene now. And when I did the latest Google search, it came up with same-sex and male-female biracial couples, and the percentages were different. So not only do people strive for acceptance as a same-sex couple, then they've got to fight the whole, we're not only same-sex, but we're different races. And I mean, that's a double whammy of attempting to be successful, being successful and being absorbed into society and accepted. So my point is, hey, we've got this swath of people that need to be accepted. I'm a member of that population, and I would like that to be easier for my kids and for all the kids that are going to be the product of an ever-increasing biracial population coming up. So I guess I'll start with when I turned black, because I think every minority has the answer to that question when they were alone, when they realized they were being attacked and there's nobody there to defend them. And my story was, when I was in high school, my high school went from 8th grade to 12th grade. And although I couldn't play varsity sports, the soccer coach thought I was talented enough to play for the varsity team in 9th grade, so he wanted me to practice with the varsity team. And one of the players on the varsity team had a real problem with that, and he let me know it. And of course, back then, I had a big afro, and there was no such thing as biracial back then. If you had an afro, you were black. So he didn't care that I was biracial. He just knew me as black. And he let it be known that he didn't want me on that team. And I was the only person of color on that team. And he was a junior, and I'm in 8th grade. And I remember at one of the practices, he's just poking me and teasing me. And finally, I just turned around, and I did what we used to call back in the day, I whipped his ass. Okay? I popped him a few times, and he gets up, and he goes, now I'm going to get you kicked off this team, you N-word. That's when I knew I was black. And there was nobody to have my six. There was nobody to back me up. And nobody stopped him from attacking me. But I was physically able to hold my own. But I'm sure if you're a minority, and maybe you're not a minority, maybe you're different, right? Maybe you're the techie. Maybe you're the nerd, okay? Maybe you get straight A's and people don't like you because you're the brain, you're the smart person, okay? Everybody's been kind of shoved out for one reason or another, and a lot of times if no one has your back, it can be a really lonely place. And let me tell you, when it comes to race, it can be a very dangerous place. Just look at our American history for that. So that's when I knew, hey, I'm black. And whether I'm biracial, whether I'm 5% black or 10% black, by society standards, I'm going to be treated as a black person in America. So I went about doing things to eliminate my issues. And I think there are things you can do if you're the only one. For example, I have a wife who's wicked smart, very intelligent, highly degreed, and a lot of times she works for an international company. A lot of times she's the only woman in the room. And how many women are listening to this and going, hey, I know that feeling, where I'm the only woman in the room. They're asking me to get coffee, and I'm like, wait a second, I'm running this meeting. Sit down. Okay? I'm sure there are a lot of black and brown people who had that experience in corporate America, where they're the only person of color in the room. And they've got to excel, and they've got to do 10 times better, it seems, than anybody else to get better treatment. And I found there were a few things that I could do as a minority that can help my cause. One is by the grace of God. I talked about in the other podcast how I got adopted from Germany, and I was brought to the United States and offered and was granted citizenship, and just been so thankful for that. But I remember going to Tijuana, Mexico, and seeing people in Tijuana, and one guy had his kid as we were leaving, and I remember giving him all the money I had in my pocket because I just felt, oh my God, I could have been that kid looking over a fence to a country that I probably never get a chance to be a citizen of and never be able to have the American dream, only because I was born in Tijuana instead of Frankfurt, Germany, and not adopted by the people that adopted me. The other thing is being God-fearing. I often say I'm not a good person. I'm a good person because I'm bad at being a bad person. So I remember when I was younger and I tried to lie, and my mother would just be like, son, you just might as well tell the truth, baby, because you just don't have the equipment to pull it off. In other words, you're too stupid to lie. Just tell the truth. It'll be a lot easier for you moving forward. And you know what? I started telling the truth, and my life was a lot better. And I had someone who grew up with me. I called her my sister until she told me not to, because we weren't brother and sister by birth. We were brother and sister because we were adopted from the same orphanage and grew up in the same house. But she'd be the first to tell you, you know, he's not my brother. He was just adopted in the same orphanage. I'm like, okay, I can deal with that. But it's funny how I always played by the rules because I never thought I was smart enough to go around the rules. And unfortunately, the young lady that I grew up with, that I called my sister, never felt like she had to play by the rules. She always felt like she was smarter than the system in place. And it led to, a lot of criminal convictions. And it led to her having a lot of issues with employment and job opportunities because she just chose not to play by the rules. So you can help your cause by being God-fearing and law-abiding. I think it may be corny, but it works. Okay, I've never seen the inside of a police car. Okay, not from the inside. I've looked in, but I've never sat in. So you want to make sure you're a rule follower. There's nothing wrong with that. And the last thing is legacy. My older son is doing the technical stuff on this podcast. And I want him to know, since he shares my name, he's Robert Alexander Gothard. By the way, gave him the middle name Alexander after Alexander the Great. So his initials would be Rad. I'm sorry. Is that not? Anyway, I just thought that was the greatest, but it never went over well. But I wanted him to always be proud of his name. So legacy. I mean, I always use examples like Bill Cosby and all the people that through really stupid acts and criminal acts, they ruined their legacy. And sometimes it can be one act. I mean, I look at Will Smith, when they do his review of his life, they're going to have that slap at the Oscars is going to be part of that review. And I know if he had to do over again, I'm sure he wouldn't do it. He'd want a do-over on that. So legacy is important. So, yes, I was blessed. Yes, I'm God-fearing. And yes, I worry about leaving a legacy for my boys. And that leads me to the name of this podcast, Now. Because I know you're thinking like, okay, all this is great, Robert. You're a member of a minority. We get it. No one's addressing your minority. But what does that have to do with me? Well, what it has to do with you is you live in a multiracial society. And I'm going to give you what I think is a great solution for any issues you may have with any of those races. Because I think racism only works in a vacuum. In other words, the racists throughout American history knew it. They would have a compound where they would have, outlines of black people that they would shoot at. And they turned them into animals. They're savages, right? So you have to dehumanize them. In other words, you have to not know them to hate them. And how do you get to know someone? It's not swiping on a screen. You give them their 2 minutes. I'll always talk about, like Will Smith, if he passed away, he would have his 2 minute blurb on the news. Oh, the actor Will Smith, is blah, blah, blah. And they would show his 2 minutes. They would talk about maybe his early musical career and his TV, Fresh Prince, and then all of his movies that he's done. And I'm sure he's done so many more things than I can think of off the top of my head. But I remember when Richard Simmons died. Richard Simmons had his 2 minutes on the news where he talked about how he was obese and how he became this fitness guru and, was the creator of Richard Simmons Anatomy Asylum and had a bunch of books and videos. But then he switched to entertainment. Everybody knew him from the racy shorts and the tank top, and he'd be on David Letterman and talk shows. But he was a personality after that, just an entertainment personality. But he got his 2 minutes. What if we gave everyone their 2 minutes? And here's what I mean. I love the part of my job where I get to sit in my office and ask people to tell me something about themselves, because I love, putting together the puzzle of their fitness, their health and fitness needs, but I also like to find out about them as a person. And what do? They give me their 2 minute elevator pitch. Hey, I'm, 37 years old. I'm in the insurance industry. I'm married. I have 2 kids, right? This is what, if you were meeting someone, this is kind of, hey, are you married? Are you single? Do you have kids? What do you do for a living? What are your hobbies, right? When you want to get to know someone. Give people their 2 minutes. And I love getting out and meeting people. And, my family would be the first to tell you, I've never met a stranger. I'll go out running, I'll come back, and I'll talk to 10 people by the time I get back. So the main thing is giving people their 2 minutes and genuinely listen to who they are. I love if someone's serving me breakfast. I grew up waiting tables. And I love finding out if they're a student, or if they're just working to get extra cash to, go toward their hobby. But why are they there? And then if they have time, hey, yeah, I'm a student. I'm rooming with my sister, and, we both have different majors, but we're in the same year in school. And, I love that sort of stuff. But you can't find out about people if you go, well, that person's black, or that person's Asian, or that person's whatever, and I'm not going to communicate with that person because of what they are. I think you're missing out on the abundance of life that God has given us, just like he's given us all sorts of, trees. I mean, he's given us hundreds of different beetles. Just look in the oceans. You want diversity? Look under the ocean and just look at all the sea creatures there are. I think there's abundance for a reason. It's to be enjoyed and just relished. And I think humans are probably the most diverse group in nature. And I love finding out about different people. And I love giving them their 2 minutes. Now, does that mean you have to be best buds and know them for the rest of your life? No. There are some people I've met that I think 2 minutes was too long. Okay? They're either mean or something's going on with them, and I'm just not meant to talk to them for more than 2 minutes. And there are just some people that just want to see the world burn. I grew up with someone like that. They're not pleasant to be around. Let me tell you, when I got the opportunity to no longer be around that person, I don't want to be around them. Now understand, if that person's in trouble and they need the love of Jesus and they need a place to stay until they get back on their feet, I'm pretty sure I would open up my home. I'm pretty sure my wife would have to talk me into it. But anyway, I digress. The main thing is people get their 2 minutes, you evaluate, and then enjoy. It's just like, if you ever listen to music, there are songs you like, right? I love going to fitness conferences because people like me, right? People like themselves. They're energetic. They're athletic. They're, a lot of them are extroverts. So I love going to fitness conferences and talking to people like myself. But guess what? Every now and then you're listening to music and you hear a song maybe you haven't heard before. You're like, wow, I really like this song. Who is this artist? I was just training a client tonight and he heard a beat and he does DJing on the side. And he's like, oh, I got it. And he did like a little thing with his phone that told him what the song was. So he could use that song when he does DJing. But it took him by surprise, and just the pleasure of getting his phone and finding out who that artist was, and like, man, I know exactly when I can drop that beat. I feel that way around people, They can be old. And I remember we used to do this thing called Adopt a Grandparent. We just go to old people's homes and talk to them. And I remember one lady, she goes, well, and my my boy and my girl, and when they visit me, I want to make sure everything's straight. And we helped her straighten up her home, and we helped her clean her house. And I asked the lady that referred her to us when her kids ever visit. Goes, her kids never visit her. She's been preparing for those kids to visit for 20 years. How sad is that, right? Her kids won't even give her the 2 minutes, right? And sometimes I think if I have a pet peeve of myself, I'm more talkative a lot of times with people outside my home than inside my home. There are times there's a guest in my home right now that's staying with my mother-in-law who lives in our basement space, and she's been in our house for 2 days and hadn't seen me. She met me this morning for the first time, and she's like, I thought you didn't exist. I go, I get that a lot. I do get called in when they need to lift something heavy. But the main thing is, I need to do a better job sometimes of talking to people inside my house as I do outside my house. But you give people those 2 minutes, you evaluate. Hey, is this a song that I've heard 100 times? Is this a new song that maybe I want to hear again? Oh, next time you come in that restaurant, oh, David was my waiter, and I really had a chance to bond with him last. Does he have any tables in his section? I'd like to talk to David again. But the main thing is, folks, if you don't get out and talk to people, and this is not on a screen, okay? I've had the blessing of being able to do things like this podcast that I'm videotaping. I do a third of my training now for my personal training business by video and by FaceTime. And I love that I have that opportunity to reach people. And I love reaching people with fitness through a podcast, through a video, through I have books that I send people to help them with their fitness, even when they don't train with me. But just to say, look, here's a book that I did years ago. It's got good basic information, and I want you to have it because I want you to start somewhere, and I want you to start today. In other words, I gave you 2 minutes, and I think I can help you. And I think I can make your life better. And there are those people you talk to, it's like, wow, where has this person been? It's just a breath of fresh air, right? That's why I love kids. How fun is it to talk to kids? Firstly, they're brutally honest. And second of all, they're just bright-eyed. I love coaching because I love those kids coming into the room and go, hey, Coach Robert, what you got, man? And I'm like, I'm going to snatch your soul, young man. That's what I got. I'm going to snatch your soul during this training session. And they love it. You tell that to an adult. Comes in for a training session, I'm going to snatch your soul. Goes, I'm sorry, I got 3 kids and a second mortgage. You ain't snatching nothing over here, Junior. I'm here to get some muscle tone and maybe work my legs, but that's it. So, 2 minutes. Giving everyone their 2 minutes. That's what you can do now. A lot of times with fitness, I'm like, okay, when you wake up tomorrow, I want you to try to go for a walk, or I want you to take the stairs when you go to work. This is something, as soon as you hear this, the next person you interact with, give them 2 minutes. Listen to them. Find out about them. And it may be somebody, I can't tell you how many people I pass. I work out at a public gym just to get out of my studio every day. And there are some people I pass probably 50 times before I stop and go, you know what, buddy? We work out at the same time. And I know you drive like, you have a killer car outside. And I just want to say hello to you because I actually own a fitness center, and I just got a new car that I'm smitten with, and before you know it, he's like, oh, he's retired in insurance, and he got the car when he retired as like his little gift to himself, and great interaction. But I probably passed that dude 50 times before I said, you know what, I'm gonna say something to this guy. And now every time we come in, we address each other by name. It's a pleasant interaction. I love seeing him. And every time I see his car in the parking lot, I'm like, oh, he's here today. And I love that. But if I hadn't taken those 2 minutes to have that interaction, I'd be missing out on that good feeling, that good conversation every time I go into that gym. How many restaurants? How many stores? How many relatives? How many people, like I said about myself, pointing the finger at myself, how many people are in your own house that you haven't talked to in 2 days, 3 days, 4 days? Okay? Give them their 2 minutes. Find out something new about them that maybe you didn't know. I think my oldest sons found out a little bit about me doing these 3 podcasts, doing the technical work on these podcasts. But hopefully it's been something that he can be proud of and go, you know what, now I kind of know where my dad's coming from a lot of times. And through his life experience, why he does the things he does and why he feels the way he feels on certain things. So if we give, if over 300 million people in this country started giving people in person, eyeball to eyeball, 2 minutes, how would this country be? How would the race relations be? Because remember, racism only works in a vacuum. You want to be prejudiced against Asian people? Guess what? You can't meet very many Asian people because they're going to follow a bell-shaped curve, just like most races. You're going to have extraordinary ones. You're going to have a lot of average ones where I put myself, and then you have, some knuckleheads. And you're going to have that in every group. But you'll never know which one they are and where they're at in that group without talking to them. And I'm not talking about through a screen. I train FaceTime because I have to keep my business going. But I prefer in-person training. But I'd rather train FaceTime than not train at all and not see them at all. So give everyone their 2 minutes, including the people that are closest to you. And let's start making race relations in this country better now.
I liked it.
Did you like that?
I did.